President Trump and his team were in contact with top congressional Republicans before his strikes on Iran, but some key Democrats were not told about the plans until after the bombs dropped. Most Democrats have condemned the president's decision to launch the strikes without congressional approval and now are demanding classified briefings. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. First of all, thank you for coming on this morning. How did you hear about the strikes, and what was your initial reaction when you did hear?
Well, we got a cryptic notice that some incidents would begin, but no details. And then we, like everybody else, picked it up on the news when it was released. So there has not been the appropriate, I think, coordination and cooperation between the Congress and the White House. And also there's the issue of the constitutionality of attacking another country who has not attacked us. At a minimum, we need intensive discussions and briefings on what took place, what's the results, what's the damage assessment, and we later have to make a determination of whether or not we should move forward with a war powers action.
I do want to ask you this. This isn't the first time that Trump has pretty much ignored Congress. He struck Syria in 2017 without informing the Gang of Eight, and he did it again when he took out Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani. What should Congress do next? And more importantly, do you have enough support to make that decision have teeth?
Well, I think what we should be doing is looking very carefully at the War Powers Act. That is legislation that was passed in 1973 that requires the president, one, to notify Congress, and then Congress has the option, and not the option, they vote either up or down to continue the operations or not. The president, I think, is going to make the argument that this was a one-off event, and he could not disclose it because of intelligence sensitivities, but that now we finished. I don't think we finished. I think the danger here is retaliation by the Iranians. Also, ironically, perhaps an acceleration of their nuclear program with the aid of allies. Their foreign minister is in Moscow today speaking with the Russians. So we could have some very unpredictable consequences. And that's something I don't think was fully factored in by the president.
Yeah, I want to follow up on something that you spoke to. The Vice President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, all of them said Sunday that the U.S. was only interested in destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities. But then we saw Trump posting something on social media saying this: it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be regime change? And then he said MEGA, exclamation points. Trump wrote this after hearing from his top members of his cabinet that it was only about getting rid of Iran's nuclear capabilities. What do you think of this comment on Iran? He is talking about regime change.
Well, hearing is different than listening. I don't think the president listens very well when it comes to these critical matters. Any regime change would require some type of physical intervention within Iran, not an airstrike, but something more than that. And it would be, as we learned from Iraq, a long and difficult process. So I think that statement is, again, not based on sound analysis, and another way for the president to get attention in the middle of the night.
We are all still waiting for a sort of a full assessment of what happened. The IAEA saying that there was heavy damage to Iran's nuclear facilities by the U.S. Do you think that is good news, that there is at least some sort of major damage to these facilities?
Well, the airstrikes will definitely slow down any type of weaponization. The question is, and there's some doubt of whether we effectively took out their stocks of enhanced uranium, which is necessary to create a bomb. The other problem, I think, too, is how quickly these facilities might be repaired. We don't know that yet because we really don't have haven't been briefed on a damage assessment in detail. And then I think, again, as I mentioned before, there's always the possibility of technical assistance, quote unquote, from another country. Uh, and that might ironically accelerate their move to a nuclear weapon. I think they are going around the world now to their allies, particularly Russia, but also China, and saying, listen, unless we have a nuclear device, we'll be subject to these airstrikes constantly. Uh, I don't know if that logic will work, but I think they're going to try. And then, of course, I think eventually they're going to have to mount some type of retaliation as a maybe just symbolic, but it could be much more intensive than that. And then the question becomes, what do we do, particularly if our forces or close allied forces are hit by the Iranians? We just stand back and say we're done. Uh, I don't. I think that'd be a difficult choice to make. Just ignore attacks, particularly against our troops. So we're in a very difficult and a very dangerous situation.
Senator Jack Reed, thank you so much for walking us through all the scenarios that you see that are possible ahead. We will be in contact with you to get more information as you get these briefings. We're curious to hear what you learn as well. John?